I forgot you to mention about a more effective simulation tag. It's again, we added the tag from here, simulation tag, but they also developed another simulation tag called bullet tags. This is more efficient, or like it has higher performance. So I want you to just delete the tags you added previously, and under the bullet tags menu, add the collider body from there. Okay. So bullet tags part is faster actually. So add the collider body here, and to the sphere, right click, and in the bullet tags, select rigid body, okay? So this way, your simulation will run faster. And also, one advantage is that in the cloner system, you can use render instances. So I'll just stop. Remember that when previously, when I selected render instance and multi-instance in the cloner, it caused a problem that it didn't detect the sphere, so it passed through this plane. But now it's working, so I'll render instance, I can use that and increase the number of clones. And let's see, you see, even though I increase the number of clones a lot, it's still working very, let's rewind this back. It's still working like pretty well, let's say. So this is too much, obviously. I'll just decrease that and hit rewind to start again. Okay, you see that it's still working reasonably fast. So, and I'll even decrease the amount because I don't need such a big plane. Sorry, 30, 0, okay, something like this. Okay, so now I want to change the noise, play with different noise types, let's say. So I go to the shader, I go to click that image, and in the noise, I can select the box so that it becomes something like this. I can select blistered turbulence, so the whole animation character changes actually. Again, I can play with the scaling of the noise. Or booyah. So you see that it's become so obviously the bounciness is too much maybe for this. Cell noise, let's say. Okay, not this one. Cranial. Okay, so I increased the cranial a lot. So you see that at each noise type causes a different kind of animation. So dance, yeah, this might be playful. Maybe I can decrease the scale and decrease the animation speed, or maybe a little bit increase. Okay, let's say mode noise. Okay, mode noise is something more like a platform game, maybe, and increase the speed. Okay. So I'll show you another example that, for example, instead of a single sphere, I can use a cloner and clone these spheres into like, let's say, many spheres like this. And maybe decrease the scale a little. And instead of assigning this to the single sphere, I can assign this to the cloner again as collider bodies and play with multiple balls there. So I can even change the mode of this to render instance, so that, notice that how the performance increases when I change this to render instance. And I can spawn more spheres and rewind this back. Oops, rewind. Okay, disable this, okay, enable this. Sometimes it can cause problems, so always do rewind this and change the values there. So now you'll see that you see. Also, for example, I don't want them to fall around the plane. So I'll just create a container for that. Okay. And create another cube. Sorry. Copy and paste the cube and move it upwards and scale it down maybe, so that I'll subtract this smaller cube from the bigger cube by adding a Boolean object. So A subtract B. So I'll just, sorry. So using the Boolean object, I've created this container, and I'll add which tag should I add to this container here, to this Boolean object. I don't want this to be moving, so I want this to be static, and I want this to act as walls, so that when these spheres collide with this cube here, they bounce back. Yeah, definitely. So I hit right click to the container here, which I renamed, and bullet tags and collider body. So let's see what happens. I rewind the simulation and play. So this is coming. Okay, it's bouncing back, so it doesn't fall, right? So I can increase the simulation to 3000 frames maybe even, so that it continues on. And maybe make it more funny, so that I'll just pause this, rewind, and increase the clones. Let's see what happens. Will it crash or not? Whoa, okay. So I'll just, okay. And I can even move this box higher, and also make this cloner system move faster maybe, so that it becomes a livelier animation. So I can make a milli piyango çekilişi with this. I can even make a lottery game. I can design a system or a scene that will allow, for example, after some time, a ball to fall to a specific place. Okay, this is the lucky number going down. Okay, so I'll change the mode noise to a different thing, Luca, and you see what happens. Rewind the animation. Gaseous, fire. Maybe I should decrease the bounce in this collision. Bounce is set to 100, so I should maybe set it back to 10% and decrease the friction to 30 maybe, and retry this. Okay, this is too much again. So I should decrease the bounce. Okay, there are bounce to, let's say 2. Okay. So yeah, as you can see, you can play with as many as you like. As much as you like. So each one causes a different kind of animation. So I'll just decrease the speed here and rewind it back. Let's see. Okay, this is enough play, I guess. So the same system can be used to design or create a marbling animation. So there are some example tutorials here, like animation.
You can hit play and we'll see that they're all going very nice.
All right, let's get back to the tutorial.
Like this.
Dynamics, that way it rolls correctly along the surface, and it doesn't just work with spheres, this also works with other objects like cubes as well.
Kind of animations by using the same method that I've shown, or a similar method that I've shown. So actually, yeah, if you're interested in doing stuff like that, let me know and wonder how it's done. So yeah, this is basically the simulation part. And now I'll be showing you another interesting example, and that will be the classwork. So you'll be uploading that again as a classwork. So again, it will involve, okay, before the classwork, let me show you another Mograph object, which is Voronoi Fracture. Okay, we've seen cloner, and we're going to use Voronoi Fracture now. So what this does is it fractures the objects basically. For example, if I add a cube, and since this is a generator, generator object, it needs a child to function, right? So if I drop this cube inside the Voronoi Fracture, you see that it's immediately fractured into different segments. Okay, so we can see the properties of this Voronoi Fracture by clicking on the object, and in the attributes panel we can see that, okay, the object panel, sources, sorting, detailing, there are many properties there, and as usual, effectors. So, and let's see the object panel first. So for example, you can colorize the fragments to see where it's fractured, how the fractures are distributed among the surface. And there's an option called offset fragments. So this increases the cracks between these fractured parts. So you can invert this so that, or let's make it 0. When it's 0, invert doesn't work, but if there is some offset fragments, then it works. Okay. So the hull only makes it empty, like a cage, and thickness allows you to give thickness to this cage. So if some of them are working while some properties are enabled, so be careful about that. Okay. So hollow object, it works like this. Sorry, I have to show you the wireframe, the lines mode, like how this different modes change this. Hull only does, sorry, hull object. Hull only creates some geometry like this. Okay, you have to experiment with these, okay? So the interesting part starts with the use of effectors, obviously. And we can even connect this with physics simulations. So let's add, while this is selected, let's go to the Mograph menu and add a random effector. So as soon as you do that, you can see that the spacing between these things start to increase. So now they are randomly displaced among the space in these directions, and also I can, of course, change the rotations of them so that they become like rocks in space maybe. I can even randomize their scales, okay, but I'm not doing that for now. So returning back to the Voronoi fracture, I'll disable this random effector for now. We've seen the Voronoi fracture's object tab here, but there's also the sources tab, which is the part that determines the number of fragments this object is divided into. For example, in the sources tab, by default you see this, but in the sources tab you can see this point generator, which randomly generates points in space so that it is used to subdivide or fracture this geometry inside that Voronoi fracture there. So if I increase the number of point amount, you can see that it's fractured more and crashed. Okay. Okay, the whole system is gone. The previous files are gone. Sorry for that. I was going to say that, but anyway. It's always nice practice to have your scenes saved. So, okay, I'll just force quit this for now. So remember when I said use segmentation and like subdivision kind of operations responsibly? If you increase it in the way that I did, like this, it can suddenly crash the software. So okay, at least I didn't do much. Okay. Okay, this is the light version. Sorry. Yeah, I add a Voronoi fracture, put the cube inside, and sources, point generator. Let's make it 100, for example, so that you can see how it's fractured into smaller pieces. And in the object panel, I'll just offset that. Okay. And while this Voronoi fracture is selected, I go and add a random effector so that it's immediately separated through the space. Okay, it's very beautiful when you want to create random geometry actually. So disable this for now, and Voronoi fracture, let's say. Okay, in the sources tab, distribution is uniform, normal, inverse normal. So there are different options while you can create. You can even animate these properties there. So I'll just disable the colorized fragments so that we'll be able to see the geometry, how that geometry is changing. Okay. You can animate these features. Maybe increase the point amount a little bit more. See? Uniform doesn't have that option. Normal has that option. Yeah. So when you add the random, you'll see that they are distributed among the space. So let's say we want to create a motion graphics animation that dissolves these dissolves this cube into these fragmented objects. So I'll just disable that. So at first, I want it to be displayed as a whole cube, but after some time, I want it to dissolve into these cubes and make them dissolve. Okay, so this will be the classwork, and this is not on Moodle, so listen carefully. Okay, so how do you think we can transition from this to this state smoothly? Any suggestions? I want a transition between this randomness. It will start with this cube, and it will transform into this random distribution of particles in space. Any ideas? It doesn't have to be correct, just make something up. Okay? Okay, by keyframing you're saying. Okay. But keyframe which value?
The random value.
Hmm?
The random value.
The random? Okay, actually in the random effector, there's the effector tab here, and there's a property called strength. So we can keyframe this, of course. By the way, I haven't shown you keyframing techniques, but some of you are already familiar with those. So I'll just show you a very basic technique. For example, you can adjust every property in Cinema 4D which has these boxes here, or buttons or something like that, keyframe toggles. You can create keyframes to properties which have these icons next to them through time, which means like this time. So for example, one way is of course keyframing this, but in the assignments and your projects we won't be using keyframe animations, but we'll be using mainly procedural animation techniques. But of course you should be knowing this keyframing technique also, so I'll show that. So in the random effector, this effector tab has this strength property, right? When it's 0, okay, this effector is not working, as if it's closed, okay? It's the same, when this is 0 and active, it's the same as if it is inactive or such. You see, nothing happens when this is 0. But if it's 100, then this means these parameters are applied to this Voronoi Fracture object 100%. Like, for example, it's moved randomly in x direction 600 centimeters by 900 centimeters. So, yeah, returning back to the keyframing, we'll start with this state. So we go to the 0th frame and hit this keyframe button here, and notice that it has become red, which means that at this current time there is a keyframe. If I move this timeline to the first frame, second, third, fourth, notice that it's not filled inside, okay? But if I return it back to the 0th frame, it's filled inside, which means that at that frame there is a keyframe, which is also, for example, you can see that here there is a keyframe because of this, okay? So as I said, at the 0th frame it will start with a whole cube, but in the end I want it to, which means that like the 90th frame, I want this to have 100% value. Okay. And now you see that it's not red, but orange, which means, okay, this property has some kind of keyframe on this timeline, but the current value is different from that keyframe number. So at that instance, at the 19th frame, I have to change the value to the desired amount and then hit that keyframe again so that this becomes red and a keyframe is created here. Now this random effector has two keyframes, at the 0th frame and at the 90th frame. Okay, so when I hit play, you see that there starts to become a transition between these two states, right? But there's another option, which is a much more controlled way of dissolving this into another animation. So I'll undo these. By the way, I'm showing this for a general understanding of the technique, but I never want you to use these keyframing techniques, okay? I want you to procedurally animate the things that you're going to design. So I'll go to the random effector and right click to this keyframed value, and in the animation menu here I'll just hit delete track so that whole keyframes on this property are erased. So when I hit play, nothing happens. Okay, so you'll be submitting this without keyframes. Okay, so watch carefully. So I want to selectively apply this random effector to this Voronoi fracture. Okay, so what technique can I use? How can I control this random effector in a more for example, like a mask-like manner? Sorry? Yeah, kind of, maybe. But, okay, I can also add a shader, like I'll disable this. I'll just add a shader effector. And you see that as I added that, shader effector scaled all of them. But I can also use it to move the direction. But you can see that it's moving all of the items in a certain direction. So, but I want randomness, right? So shader effector is not well suited for that. So I want random effector so that it assigns a random value to each of the clones so that I can disperse them through the space.
Is it with the seed? Is it with the seed?
Yeah, actually, what seed does is it changes the placement of that. So at each different value, they are assigned to a different space, position in space. So it's not that either. So, yeah. Sorry?
In this section, effectors.
Okay.
No.
Okay, this is assigned there. So I have to mask or selectively control the effect of this random effector. Yeah. So what kind of field maybe? Okay. So where should I do that?
It was in the random and field.
Okay.
And we can like edit from linear field.
Linear field?
Yeah, we can like that.
Okay, let's add a linear field. So see what happens. So this linear field is added here. So I'll just select that and try to move it and see what happens. Seems beautiful, kind of, like. Yeah, so I can dissolve this cube into smaller particle or like smaller fractures like this by moving this linear field, right? So, okay, let's try another kind of field. I'll just go to the random effector, and inside the fields tab, I'll delete this linear field and also delete from here just to prevent any confusions. So if you hold, click and hold this linear field button here, there are a bunch of other fields popping up. Let's say a box field. Oops. Okay, I added a box field and tried to move that. Maybe scale it down a little. So as you can see, I can now, okay, maybe increase this. So I can dig down the cube there or move this in this way so that I only affect the parts that are inside this box here. Okay. Or maybe put this just in between, like a sandwich or something like that. Okay, I can create cracks through this cube. Okay. So instead of a box field, I can go and add
Maybe we can like add a random field.
random field. Okay. So this one. So random field does, yeah, applies the effect to the whole space, right? So using random field with the random effector might not be, it might be preferable, but not in this setting maybe. So okay, I'll just disable that and add the linear field, so since it's like it acts as a transition, right? So I'll select that. It worked pretty well, so it acted as a transition. So, but I also want this to dissolve, okay? Like get smaller with time. So any ideas or suggestions to that? Or like, do you want to ask any questions until now? Like, for example, is there a part that you don't understand? Or are you trying to do it at the same time? Is it working? Okay, great. So I want it to be decreasing in size also. So maybe I can play with, in the random effector, there's the parameters tab, remember? In which like I adjust the amount of displacement when this field is passed through. Maybe this is too much, so I can go to the random field and decrease the position to, for example, something like this. And then what happens is like it doesn't disperse it that much, but only this much, okay? But I want it to be create a very random look, so I'll increase this so that when this is passed through it, it disperses all of them. Okay? So I'll disable this random effector and go to the Voronoi Fracture and add another effector just to see how it might be done. Go to Mograph, effector, and let's say plane effector, okay? So what plane effector does is, by default, it moves the clones or the parts in the Mograph system 100 centimeters in the y direction. I'll disable that because I want to play with scale. So I go to the scale and let's say uniform scale. And if I decrease that, so you can see that, okay, I can play with the scale. If it's -1, it means that it becomes 0, okay? So now I have two different effectors that does what I need them to do. One is plane effector, let's say play with the strength. So one is scaling them down, and the other one is randomizing or dispersing their motion. So how can I combine? Okay, so also I can create a field for that, for this plane effector, a linear field, so that it scales them down and dissolves them, right? So, okay, I have two different systems which does what I want, but I want a unified transition which, for example, gradually disperses them outwards and scales them to 0 at the same time. So any suggestions on how to do that?
Maybe we cannot now put them together under the null.
Put which one of them together?
The two effectors.
Okay, let's try that. So I'll put these effectors inside them. So what should I do?
Start the animation.
Start the animation and nothing is happening. Okay, maybe I can move the null, let's say. Okay.
So I can only think of keyframing them.
Okay, so maybe I should zero the positions of this so they remain at the same coordinate. So let's do this also. And enable this. So okay, add a null and put these inside the null. And maybe move this null. I'm moving that null now. And as you can see, as they are dissolving, because I'm moving the null, I'm moving all of these objects in 3D space together because I've grouped them inside the null. So yeah, it kind of works, but there is a better way and more efficient way for that. Because, for example, if I change one linear field's dimensions like this, the other one remains the same. So they are not connected to each other. So it becomes harder to control after some time. So can I use a single field to control both of these effectors? Is it possible or not? There are two linear fields that control. This linear field controls this random effector, and this linear field controls this plane effector. So can I use a single field to control both effectors? Yes or no?
Yes.
Then how? Okay, each effector, remember, has a tab called fields, and inside that field I can drag and drop different fields in your scene. So even if I drag this out and drag this out and go to the plane effector, they are still there, right? So I can delete, for example, I can delete one of these linear fields and use this single field to control both of these effectors. So plane has this field connected, but the random had the other field that I deleted, so it disappeared from here after I deleted it. So if I select the random effector, go to the fields tab, and drag this field to there, then this means that this field is, okay, let's rename this global effector control. Okay. Or like transition field, let's say. We'll see that this plane effector has this transition field, and random effector has this transition field. So one effector is driving both of the animations. So if I, for example, scale this down, it will create a faster transition. If I increase this, it will create a smoother transition. Okay? So this can be, since that I have this system now, instead of a cube, I want a text to be dissolving. So inside the Voronoi Fracture, I put the text and deleted the cube and use this. So see? Let's change this back to that and select the heavy typeface maybe. Yeah, put a bold and align it in the middle and transition. Okay. So this is the classwork that you're going to submit. Asla. Let's check. So, by the way, I mentioned that, okay, I don't want to use, I want you to use keyframes, but for this one, you can use a keyframe just to show this functionality. So I'll just, I start from here, and in the transition field, coordinates, I want it to move in this direction, right? Yours might be different, so you can put a different keyframe for yours. At the 0th frame, I hit this button, add a keyframe, and at the 100th frame or 90th frame, I move it towards this space and add a keyframe. Okay? So when you hit play, it's something like this. I'm coming.